What's your biggest takeaway from week one of the preseason?
My biggest takeaway from week one, I've watched a lot of tape, actually, with that NFL Plus. It's not paid advertisement, people, but I watched a lot of the replays, and my biggest takeaway actually is how much more fluid and organized the Jacksonville Jaguars are from head to toe, and it actually showed on the field. Trevor Lawrence played, I think, pretty well, if not really well. Didn't turn the ball over, was really efficient. There was a couple throws, I'm sure he wish he would have back, but they actually came right out of the gates. Got a deep ball to Zay Jones, who actually they targeted really, really heavily in the game. So I'm going to be paying a bit of attention to him. Obviously with Christian Kirk, he was another one of their wide receiver acquisitions. And you know, going from Urban Meyer and that whole saga to Doug Peterson with a championship pedigree and just knows how to run an organization. Honestly, you can see it. You can definitely see it on the field, and I'm actually really excited to see how well Trevor Lawrence plays. And the Jaguars could have a couple of fantasy steals on their roster this year in what's I'm anticipating to be a much better offense than they were last year. Defense will probably be better as well. As a result of that, just overall. So that was my biggest takeaway of week one of the preseason is that the Jaguars look like a much better organization, a much better team. Their product is a lot better, and I'll be excited to turn on a Jaguars game this year, opposed to going, oh god, what kind of story is going to be in the news this week about the.
Yeah, yeah. I like that one. I think it's not hard to be better than they were last year. That's for sure. Like you
Yeah,
mentioned, Urban Meyer pretty much tore the entire organization apart in the short time he was there. But I think they are going to be able to turn it around with Doug Peterson. I like a couple of the guys that you mentioned. I obviously one of the guys we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Travis Etienne. I think he's going to be a big contributor in probably a fantasy steal for somebody who can, hopefully land them on their roster. I would say for me, my biggest takeaway is that the Dallas Cowboys are going to be in big trouble if they can't fix their penalty issues. Obviously with the talent they lost at wide receiver with Amari leaving, um, I think they lost another receiver. They've got injury to Michael Gallup. They have uncertainty on their offensive line. They really can't afford to have as many self-inflicted wounds as they had last year. I don't anticipate their defense is going to be turning the ball over at the clip that they were last year. That was just an unbelievable turnover ratio that they had last year. I mean, I would be
yeah,
really, really surprised to see if they do that again this year. So they're not going to be able to cover up for a lot of the penalties that they commit. And I know it's only preseason, but 17 penalties is a lot even for a preseason game. And honestly, I think Mike McCarthy could find himself on the hot seat pretty quickly if they don't get it turned around. And we may be seeing Sean Payton take over at some. I think that's going to happen anyways, but I think it may happen sooner rather than later if they can't turn around, the penalty issues and start playing with some discipline and focus. So that would be my biggest takeaway from week one of the preseason is the Dallas Cowboys still have the same issues they had to end the season.
yeah. Actually, Stephen A. he gave a pretty hilarious take on that the other day, and I would agree with that. It's not my biggest takeaway, but it's definitely a big takeaway from week one of the preseason because you've had a whole off season to go in and correct the mistakes. And I know everyone could go, oh well, it's just week one of the preseason. Well, what about all of last year? And the preseason last year, it's not something that's new. It's a recurring issue. So it's not just week one of the preseason. It's well, this is like week 20 of this happening,
Yeah.
whether it be in regular season, preseason, training camp. In the game against the Niners, actually, they had 14 turnovers in that playoff game. Um, so had they had less turnovers, they may have won the
Or
game.
penalties, 14 penalties.
Penalties, yes,
Yeah.
not turnovers.
14
Gosh,
turnovers.
14
Goodness
turnovers.
gracious.
That must be some kind of record.
That'd
Yeah,
be amazing.
so
But yeah.
14 penalties in the game against the Niners. So yeah, I mean, reduce the penalties. Maybe they can make it a little further in the playoffs. I mean, they obviously have the talent to make the playoffs. But once you get there, it's stuff like that that can really, really, take away from what you did in the regular season. To be honest,
Yep.
hopefully they don't clean it up. But we'll see.
Yeah. I'm rooting for the same thing. I hope it's status quo for them for a while.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think we had a couple good ones there. I agree with your Jacksonville takeaway. I think that they're gonna turn some heads. I'm not sure they're gonna win a ton of games this year. I think they're gonna be way more competitive, and they're gonna surprise some people with how competitive they are, and they're gonna win some games that they probably shouldn't win, and really start to turn the corner. I think with the new regime in there, so that'll be interesting to see.
I would take the over on 4 wins.
Oh yeah, I think they'll win more than four.